everyone, this is a special edition of the Two Signals and Cheats podcast, Sailor Moon podcast. I am Chari Vandelleras, and I am flying solo tonight. You can follow me at Facebook at Chari Vandelleras, CHARIVONDILLARIZZ, and apparently flying solo means I cannot spell. Or you can follow me on Twitter at CVondelleras, CVONDILLARIZZ. And even though the beautiful Faindina is not joining me this evening, you can follow her on Facebook at Faindina or on Twitter at Faindina Cosplay. And of course, our Sailor Moon podcast website is atusegnosenchi.weebly.com. And for the email, it's atusegnosenchi@gmail.com. And that is AITOSEIGINOSENSHI. That is a long title. We might have to consider shortening that eventually, but I really like A Soldier of Love and Justice. And tonight I'm just going to talk about a little bit about my fan fiction and just kind of some of the stuff that I want to talk about that, I love recording with Faindina, but our schedules have been clashing, and I know you guys haven't had any new content in a really long time from us because everything has just been so crazy and busy and real life hectic. So I'm just going to talk myself, and then I'll add some of the stuff to the website and everything, and we will just kind of have some fun, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. But I really want to talk about fan fiction. We went to see the R movie, but I want to do that one with Faindina. I do not want to do that without her. So tonight we're just going to talk about my fan fiction. Hopefully at least some of you have read it and have enjoyed it or hated it. I don't know. But I write mostly an AU series that takes place in the Crystal Tokyo era, that is centered around the second child, an original character. And I know not everybody's into original characters, but the second child of Neo Queen Serenity and King Endymion. It kind of sprung out of the idea, two ideas. It was dual-natured. It sprung out of two thoughts of, I always wished that Seiya had a happy ending, that she never got in the manga or in Sailor Moon Classic, but I always wanted her to have one, and I knew that, there's Usagi and Mamoru, and they're destined to be together, and as much as, I ship Usagi and Seiya, I didn't want to mess with that, so I really wanted to start thinking, what if Seiya had gotten a happy ending? What if there was someone out there that was meant to be with Seiya? Someone that we never met. And then I had another thought. I'm not really sure, I don't remember which one came first, but they kind of came and married together of what if Mamoru had an heir the same way that Chibiusa was Usagi's heir? Because Chibiusa became Sailor Chibi Moon. She has a crystal similar to Usagi's. She is the heir to that moon legacy. Where is the heir to that Earth legacy? And so that was kind of how Kyoko was born. And what would a child or an individual who is Mamoru's heir and who is much more like Mamoru, what would they be like as opposed to, being Usagi's heir? And so it just kind of grew out of that. And in the first story, there was that dynamic destined meeting, and I loved writing that moment where Kyoko knows that everything in her world is changing, and she hasn't even seen Seiya's face. And I know I'm doing fan service to my own stuff, but I love the story. I love writing it. I love going back and rereading it when I have the chance, and even though I haven't written a lot lately, and I apologize to those of you who are my readers for that, because again, real life has had to take precedence as it should, but it really kind of sucks because I love writing their story. I love that character. I even actually have a second Twitter account that is a roleplay account for Kyoko that is Kyoko Chiba. So it's at Kyoko, Chiba, it's all one word. So KIYOKOCHIBA. And so she has found her Seiya after some bumps in the road, and they are expecting a child. So it kind of is based on the fic, but not at the same time. So I'm just kind of enjoying playing around in the world with the character, and I've been fortunate enough to find some other players that are willing to play along with my wonderful alternate universe headcanon. And I've got a Neo Queen Serenity and a Lady Serenity, my sister, my mother. I've got a good Haruka and Machuru that play with me a lot. So it's a lot of fun, and it's one of the things that I try to do to keep myself in those little moments where I get time immersed in that world, so that when I'm able to find the time to write, that it's still that world, I still feel connected to that world. So even though sometimes I feel guilty because I can take 5 minutes and role play, but creating a chapter takes a lot more time and a lot more focus and energy, so I don't have as much time to do that. And now I'm spent way too long apologizing, and I apologize. But to get back to my point, I fell in love with the character, with the idea. And then she just kind of took shape, and I was like, well, what would I want her to look like? And I thought, I wanted her to have dark hair like Endymion, and Endymion's blue eyes, and, more of his reserved nature and mannerisms, but still looking like she belongs in the Silver Millennium. And she takes her look, in my head anyway, which I know every reader interprets differently, so I would not besmirch anybody's interpretation of her, but my interpretation, she looks a lot like human Luna. She has the double odongos with the long flowing hair, and it really hadn't occurred to me at the time that Luna even had blue eyes, so she really looks a lot like human Luna with different color schemes and things. So that's kind of how she started, and how, I wanted her to be, no, I didn't want her to be a Senshi at first. I wanted her to be something different because Mamoru was something different, and so she became a priestess, and that gave, and the crystal, and that gave her access to magical powers, and gave her and something interesting of a foundation, but at the same time, it didn't just give her, she wasn't just another sailor. She wasn't just another Senshi. She wasn't just another guardian. She was something a little bit different. And I always felt like they could have done more with the Golden Crystal and with Mamoru having, even though the manga did a much better job with exploring some power there, I wanted to see where that could lead. And I love Haruka and Machuru. Bandian always says I have a little bit of Machuru, dislike, and I can see why she would think that, but for me, I really do love both characters. And that's why I always felt like I wanted them to be a major part of the story. And my personal draw to Haruka, I think, I admit, probably influenced Kyoko's closeness with Haruka. I mean, I cosplay Haruka. I love Haruka. I've role-played her in multiple groups. She's very near and dear to my heart, too. So I kind of, went with it. And in that first story, they play a very protectorate role. But even as I was writing it, I felt like there was just more to that relationship between Kyoko and Haruka. And with all the struggles, it reminded me of the struggles that I felt like Haruka had with Usagi and Seiya's friendship in Stars. That was kind of where my inspiration came from for that, and I went with it, and the more I explored it, the more as the story evolves and you get into part 2 where they come back to Earth, which I know is probably people's not as favorite installment because it doesn't have a lot of action. It's what one would call more of a fluff piece. But I think it was important to reestablish that connection and to explore those interpersonal relationships to continue building the universe. So that was where I wanted to go with that. Is, you have to think after so long, what's it going to be like to go and the whole world has changed since the end of the first story. So what is that like? And did we really need an evil influence on top of that? And I really felt like to establish that next step that I wanted to focus on those interpersonal relationships more. So I hope that for those of you who read it, that even though it may not be your favorite installment, that you really take a look at that second piece, that second installment, Reunions, because it is important to the development of the characters. And it's also the story, spoiler alert, it's the story where Seiya proposes to Kyoko. And I think that to take a character in a relationship that maybe were we going to head that direction and then to go there, I don't know. I really enjoyed writing that piece. And then, you have the third story, which is by far one of the most popular, and I totally understand why. It is Resurrections, is the return of the Shitnu to the generals to this life, to that universe, and to be able to reunite them with the inner Senshi. And I keep saying I loved writing it because I love writing the whole series. And if I didn't love writing it, I wouldn't keep doing it. But that one was particularly enjoyable because I got to explore the conflicts that the inner Senshi would have within themselves about wanting those that they loved back, but at the same time worrying about their duty to the line of the Silver Millennium and the danger that it posed. So that one has a lot of ups and downs. I also like that I was able to connect and explore some of those relationships between Kyoko and the inner Senshi that way, that I didn't know how well I'd get to explore until that idea started ruminating in my head of what if we could bring them back? What if they didn't have to be alone anymore? I mean, you look at the series and it eventually establishes that the starseed is kind of like their life essence. Well, those stones are what were left when the Senshi were gone. Their spirits are contained in those stones. Eventually, you really have to think about the purgatory of that. They're soldiers, and so they're happy to serve their master, but that, to me, that just feels like purgatory to me. So, even though I think that they played an important role as advisors to Endymion and that it might have been too much to bring them back earlier, I wish eventually that they would have brought them back. I think that possibly when they're at the end, when the starseeds and everyone came back, that maybe you could have gotten a glimpse that maybe they could have come back too. But again, I'm a hopeless romantic for that kind of stuff. I want the happy ending for